Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us on this third day of Charcha 2020, online convening, largest of its kind dialogue between the development sector. So it's been 2 days of wonderful discussions on a variety of topics, and within the fundraising and philanthropy track, which we've been focused on, we've talked a lot about what investors, funders, philanthropists, NGOs can do to address this crisis that we're all facing. And today we're really going to focus on the role of the government and specifically how civil society and NGOs can effectively partner with the government. That is really essential for service delivery, and this new normal pretty much requires that sort of collaboration. So this is what this panel discussion is about. We're very, very fortunate. We've got a fantastic panel with us of 5 leading experts who are experts in this topic. And what I'm going to do is, rather than frame the discussion too much, I think it's a topic that all of the NGOs certainly appreciate, and now the government also appreciates. We've got 2 representatives here from civil society as well, who have directly been working with governments and partnering with NGOs. So what I would like to do, with your permission, is to sort of go one by one and request each of our 5 panelists here to share perspectives on what their organization has been doing and how do they really answer this critical question of how does government leverage A, the capacity, and B, the delivery models of the NGOs, both for short-term relief, whether it's food, shelter, cash, or medium to long-term service delivery, and of course to the most vulnerable and affected segments of the society. I'd like to introduce Mr. Ashok Kamath, who I don't think needs much of an introduction. He's the chairman and the managing trustee of Akshara Foundation, where he leads strategic planning, analysis, expansion of programs. Akshara is probably one of the largest and most well-known NGOs in the education space. So, Mr. Kamath, it would be lovely to get your perspective on 3 things. One is, if you could share overall, firstly, how have you and Akshara been so successful in working with government in large states in delivering public education? And how have you been responding to the COVID challenge, both the short-term challenge of adaptation of operations in the last 6-7 weeks and the long-term ongoing challenge of digital access in affordable education for this underprivileged segment?
Thank you so much, Karthik. Good morning, everyone. Karthik asked me to talk about what we've been doing prior to COVID, which will lend itself to what we did during COVID and what we think we should do after in the post-COVID era. Prior, we were very clear, as much as Viraj talked about, very clear that scale comes only working through the public system. 65% of our children go to schools in the public system, and these are the ones that would get affected in situations like COVID very, very easily. So we work closely with the state. In fact, across the states of Karnataka, Odisha, and Andhra, approximately 100,000 schools use a model that we've developed for teaching math for children between grades 1 and 5. Now, our model leverages existing resources. So teachers are there, so you leverage them. They need to be supplemented and empowered in many ways. So we've created all those tools, whether they are technology-based or in classroom-based processes. And to ensure continuity of classroom instruction in the home, we also created an online property called Building Blocks, which is, again, open source, free product, available, teaches math to children, grades 1 through 5, structured with the curriculum, the national curriculum framework, and all the rest of it, and available in 9 Indian languages. So essentially, we have a footprint that probably covers 80-85% of the country. The product also works offline. So that was an important thing that we did. Perhaps a significant part of our model was the creation of local education volunteers who, prior to the COVID attack, were giving us approximately 2 hours per month of quality time. And we have a cadre in Karnataka of approximately 15,000 such workers, such education volunteers, right? So when COVID came about, we had a challenge. Schools were shut, so our people could not go out much. And yet we had this, suboptimal utilization of not only our people, but also this large network of, education volunteers. And we said we would put this to use. So in the 5-6 weeks that just ended yesterday, our people, the volunteers as well as our own people, have reached out to nearly 292,000 households, meeting the households with all the social distancing norms, masks and everything, and advising them and making them aware of the dangers of the virus and what they should be doing and so on. Now, to make this happen, we worked with approximately 14,500 education department officials from DDPI down to school headmasters, and another 32,800 community members like Gram Panchayat members, school monitoring committee members, and Panchayat development officers and so on. So this, effectively has helped us reach out to, we think conservatively, about 1 million people. If you assume 5 persons per household, we've kind of reached over 1 million people. More important, the Building Blocks app, wherever there were smartphones, we've had the parents install them so that they can keep their children engaged. And on each phone, we can anchor up to 6 children by giving them avatars. So we think upwards of 60,000-70,000 children have now started to do math on a smartphone, on an entry-level smartphone. So this is what we've done during the downtime, during the lockdown period. We are obviously concerned, like everybody else, what happens when schools reopen. We need to worry about physical distancing norms. We also need to worry about the fact that many of these children need to come to school. If for nothing, they need to come to school to get the midday meal. Many children do depend on that midday meal. We are also aware that if you go fully online, those that don't have digital access devices in their homes will lose, and therefore you need to, that digital divide will, further widen. And of course, the reactions could be that can we have 2 shifts, one in the morning and one in the afternoon? And I feel that in a lot of rural communities, the last bus leaves the village at 4 o'clock. So it's not likely that the teacher is going to stay, beyond that time. So we need to find an alternate to all of this. Our idea was to make this half and half, but with a twist. We are leveraging the MHRD has a platform called Diksha, on which our content is available. And so is content available from multiple other players. Okay, and I'm only talking about open source content that could be used freely. So we are suggesting and working out the details right now that if you have half the children in the classroom with the social distancing norms, the other half could be given homework by scanning. The states are printing textbooks with QR codes that if you scan that, it takes you to the appropriate content on the Diksha platform. So if teachers if you can think of a class of 30, I have 15 in the class and 15 are giving homework. And in the homes, the children are basically scanning and studying. And the next day, the children are reversed, and those who are at home today will be in the classroom tomorrow. Now, what that does is everyone gets the same amount of time from the teacher, and hopefully removes the digital divide. So where do these phones come from, right? So we are saying that there's got to be a way of getting the governments not to buy them, but to lease them and create entrepreneurship in the rural communities. Because remember, with all this migrant population also going back, we're going to have shortages of jobs in rural communities. So can we make some of them, entrepreneurs who will lease these phones to the state, to the schools, in exchange for X rupees per child per month as a lease fee, and they will manage all the logistics. What are the logistics? Every day, the phones have to come back to the school for sanitization and recharging, and the phones get swapped between the kids. Those who are in the classroom don't get the phones. Those who are not in the classroom will carry the phones back. So we're thinking of doing a pilot of this sort to show proof of concept over the next few weeks and see where it takes us. Really, it is important for us to not let the virus get the better of us, because the scare is that children may drop out in large numbers if we don't do things right, and that would be another sign of taking more and more people into poverty. So I think education is key to a robust revival and a robust future. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was extremely, extremely insightful. And, that last point that you mentioned, it couldn't be more true. Many folks are looking at healthcare, obviously, as a critical sector, but education, both for, primary and pre-primary, but also skilling, right? Because it also involves getting people back into their jobs. So, and frankly, skilling of healthcare workers. So as a broad area, we're seeing a lot of interest here. And really, I guess it's about collaboration, right? So one question is, what should be the role of the state government versus the private sector in service delivery to citizens? Is it a case of balance, or is it a case of the government becoming more of an enabler and moving more towards private provision? Because sometimes people say that the private sector shouldn't be involved in certain things, right? And there's this confusion. Do you mean the for-profit private sector or the not-for-profit private sector?
Yeah, so let me just, take it in a more concrete manner. So if you take, this Android app that we talked about, the building blocks, right? So it required funding from the corporate sector. In this case, it was Cisco, to help us create that problem, the product, right? Then when it comes to delivery, you need multiple channels. The state government pitched in by printing textbooks. So to give you a sense, in June of 2020, across 4 states, 33 million textbooks would have QR codes that will link it to this. Okay, so that's a large reach, if you will, right? And to make that happen, we had to unbundle things so that it's aligned chapter by chapter to the text. So there's that little bit of work. During the COVID time, when education volunteers go door to door, that's the last mile delivery that's important. So I think you need to be able to take all of these we've done it across 1 state at this point. And of course, the Diksha platform is across 4 states, but nothing to prevent all things going across the entire country.
I think